Will you give the speakers tonight?
Yes.
Really, this isn't,
I don't know, I think everybody's muted, including you guys there at City Hall, so just so you know that.
that's.
I don't know if that's on purpose at this point or not.
Heavens.
There we go. There's probably the microphone.
Now,
Okay, I've got 5:30 here. Is everybody, I guess the question is, do we have a quorum? I think we do.
Yep.
All right, very good. Is everybody ready there?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, I'll go ahead and call to order. Tonight's city council meeting, Monday, January 11th, 2021. Happy New Year, everyone. If we could do a roll call, please.
Dave Anderson? Here. Carl Broberg? Here. Jennifer Mazias?
Here.
Mary McGrath? Mary McGrath? Tom Nymus?
Here.
Karen Spears Novacek?
here,
Laura Tulowitzki?
Here.
Six members are present?
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next item is approval of minutes, and before I ask for a motion on that, I just want to note that I did give Tony just a couple of minor edits on the December 14th meeting minutes. Nothing of substance. One was a typo, and the other was just clarifying that 6 of the 7 members were present and voting in favor of the change. It wasn't that 6 of the 7 members voted in favor and there was anyone against it. So just to clarify that. And I don't think I had any edits on the others. So with that noted, if anyone would care to make a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion that the minutes as edited for December 14 and December 28, 2020 be approved.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen, second by Tom. Any other discussion, edits, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion that the review or the approval of monthly expenditures as reviewed.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Laura. Roll call vote, please.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Yes.
Karen Novacek?
Yes,
Tom Nymus?
Yes.
Mary McGrath? Jen Mazias?
Yes.
Carl Broberg?
Yes.
Dave Anderson? Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is public comment. Is there anyone either in person or online that would like to make a comment on any of our agenda items?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to. This is Jeremy Oswald.
Sure, Jeremy, go right ahead. Do we need Jeremy to state his name and address for the record?
Yes.
I'm happy to do so. My name is Jeremy Oswald. I live at 401 West 5th Street in the city of Washburn. I was on this, I wanted to talk to you just really briefly, my thoughts about the Pearl Beach item that's on your agenda. I was on the city council when this originally came to this group. I voted in favor of it happening, and I was just very surprised to see that this body did not try, from what I saw, very hard to extend the open door to them, and didn't extend their lease or the agreement. And I was disappointed because this seemed like a very good match for the city, a very good match for the location that it was in, and was sad to see that it doesn't seem to be working out. So I will leave it at that. Thank you all for all the service that you do on this body. I was disappointed in this, but you have a good group here, and thank you for serving the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to any of the agenda items?
Melissa Martinez.
Sure, Melissa. Please go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and then proceed.
Yes, please excuse me, I am out of the country, so if my internet goes bad, Tony has my has my letter. But my name is Melissa Martinez. I'm the director of the Washburn Chamber. My address is 821 6th Avenue West, Ashland, Wisconsin.
Great, thank you.
And I am talking today about the ordinance 21002 about regulating commercial activity in city property. I understand the original ordinance 20009 and the importance of having that to deal with some of the groups that were taking advantage of using city property for business. I wanted to state that I was kind of disappointed that the chamber was not contacted for ideas on this new ordinance or for information on businesses that we know would be affected by a change in policy. I have gone through everything that I've read that was included in the packet for today, and I was concerned about some of the things I was seeing, things that were unclear for businesses about what they would be paying, whether they would be paying more than one fee, whether they would be considered exempt or not. And so to make long story short, I'm hoping that a decision isn't made this evening, that hopefully not only the chamber but businesses that would be affected by this could meet and discuss how this would affect business in Washburn. Knowing that there's businesses that will take their business elsewhere if this does pass tonight, and also wondering, you know, the logic of adding new fee to businesses during COVID when we know that our local businesses, especially some of the micro businesses that this would be affecting, are hanging on by a thread. So that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us, even though you're not even in the country. Really appreciate that. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment regarding any of our agenda items tonight?
We have someone in the audience at the podium waiting.
Okay, sure. We'll take the person there in person first, and then I see Blake Gross would like to also make a comment.
Okay. My name is Linda Warren. I live at 34 Oak Road, Washburn, Wisconsin. And I'm here about the commercial use of the parks as well. And I teach fitness classes in the public parks during the
If
nice
you,
weather.
sorry, Linda, if you could just make sure you're really speaking right into that microphone. It's a little hard for us to hear online.
Okay, my name is Linda Warren. I live at 34 Oak Road, Washburn, Wisconsin. I'm here about the commercial use of the parks. I use the public parks to teach fitness classes during the nice weather. And I want to know if it will affect my business, my small business, or the other businesses that I teach through. So I want to know if I need a permit or if that's going to affect my expenses overall. And that's why I'm here.
Very good. Thank you very much, Linda. Okay, we'll go to Blake Gross.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the City Council. My name is Blake Gross of the Law Office of Blake Gross Limited, 106 Main Street, West Ashland. I represent Pearl Beach Construction and Carl Dornberg. Mr. Dornberg is unable to be here this evening and is currently somewhere where he cannot get reliable cell phone service, so I'm here on his behalf. I don't know to what extent, if any, I will be asked or required to speak during the relevant section of tonight's meeting, so I simply want to place my appearance on the record. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? I'm not hearing anyone else there in person. So, seeing none, we will move on to mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. And I don't think I have any of the above, really, tonight. I have been very focused on trying to get through the very detailed ordinance revisions myself, and really that has been my focus, trying to get through that and reach out to some folks, at least that I know might be affected by the ordinance. And so between that and then trying to put out a last-minute survey on lighting, those have been kind of the things that I've been focusing on. I don't really have any announcements other than those are the things I've been working on primarily, and there are no proclamations that anyone has requested, and there are no appointments to be made. We do still have a vacancy on the Harbor Commission, so please think about if anybody that you know of might be qualified for that and desire that sort of an appointment. Please encourage them to contact City Hall. Moving on to discussion and action on ordinance 21-001, updating procedural requirements for granting special exceptions to the zoning code. That is in tab 1 of the packet. And as noted in the letter, there generally are very few of these instances, and we did have a couple of them this past year, and it did become slightly problematic for the time frame of folks who were trying to get work done before the construction season ended, to have to wait another month, when generally the City Council does take the recommendation of the Plan Commission. And so it seems to make sense. Does anyone care to either make a motion or have anything to bring up about this?
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of ordinance 21-001.
I'll second.
Okay, that was a motion by Karen and a second by Dave. Is there any other discussion, or does anyone have any questions about this or concerns? Jen?
I guess I would just wanted to reach out to Scott and the administration and Tony. Are you guys in favor of this, and would this make it a little bit less cumbersome for you guys? Do you have any concerns?
So it would certainly speed up the process when we have these types of requests. So I certainly have no objection to this ordinance.
Has there ever been a time where the council has not, I guess, agreed?
With the Plan Commission, yes, you have to go back several years, but there certainly has been disagreements in the past. I mean, there was disagreements when the zoning ordinance was under the 4-year revision process and finally approved.
It goes immediately, yeah.
2017.
If it's not granted, it goes to the next city council meeting for council review.
Correct.
And Scott, were there, just as far as this goes, this is only for special exceptions. Have there been any instances where council hasn't agreed with the plan commission on special exceptions?
No, we've only dealt with 3 of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, this is Laura. The question that Jennifer asked, I wasn't going to bring up because you had put in your memo that you favored passage, and it seems like what I'm always looking for is a more efficient way to get things done, to free up time in the office and for the staff in general. But would it be prudent now that the question's been put out there? I'm wondering about if there was disagreement, and if there was, most of the special exceptions I've seen are reasonable and people just want to get their work done, and not have to wait for another city council meeting to come around. When it's once a month, that can be a real problem. But it's usually unanimous or close to it. So would it be prudent to have some kind of wording that requires it to be, I don't know, what is it when it's more than majority? It's, you know.
A supermajority?
Yeah, so what would that?
2/3 or more.
Right? Is that useful, or is that going to make it more complicated? What do you foresee going wrong with that? Because I feel like that would be an indicator that it's not.
I have to I have to think back. I believe the zoning ordinance requires 4 members of the plan commission to approve at any time.
Look.
So we already, on all plan commission matters, if somebody's absent, you still need to have the 4 members. So in many cases, we have more than a majority there, if I'm remembering that ordinance correctly.
All right. Then I think that's absolutely. All right.
Would it make it too complicated to say if it is unanimous, it doesn't have to go to city council?
It would only go to city council if the special exception would be denied by the plan commission.
Right, as it's written currently. I guess what I'm asking is, would it be, is there an option to make it only, it doesn't have to go to city council if it is approved unanimously, and if it's not approved unanimously, then it would have to go to city council? I'm sensing some hesitation there, so that would be a way to address that.
There we go.
However, we do have a motion and a second to approve. So, is there any other discussion, or should we go ahead and just take a vote on that? Is everyone ready for a vote?
I'll have an answer momentarily on the voting requirement for this. It's taking a minute to pull up my zoning.
Okay, sounds good. We can wait a minute here.
Well, just to clarify, the hesitation is only in foreseeing the possibility of a situation that is that creates a problem, but for some reason, most are supportive of making the exception. One or two people having a serious concern, and I mean, how would that be dealt with otherwise? Without having to send it to council? I mean, just have faith in the group?
I just got a message from Jen. When we are speaking, can we speak into the microphone, please? So she can hear that?
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Is better?
The way that would be addressed is at the hearing at the Plan Commission, which is an open public meeting hearing on that matter. So there is opportunity for the applicant to submit their case and their questions regarding the special exception then. The Plan Commission can make that decision. I'll note that it is, it's either 2017 or 2018, the Wisconsin State Legislature passed a law that greatly restricted the amount of discretion that either the Plan Commission or the Common Council has in granting these requests. Now, rather than it being a discretionary act, really it is, if the applicant meets the requirements of the zoning code for a special exception, it has to be granted. It's not like a conditions, well, if we think this will help or this will be compliant, then we'll grant it. It's if they are going to meet it, then it has to be granted. Which really has removed a lot of this discretion that otherwise would fall into policy or these other areas where the Common Council as a whole may want to make a decision on it.
Thank you.
I got this up.
Thanks, Max. I think that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, is everyone comfortable proceeding with a vote? I think that's a yes. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then I actually, because we have Mike on the phone here for items 3 and 4, and I guess we have Melissa on for item 2, so we have people on for everything. Maybe we'll just go ahead in order. So the next item is discussion and action on ordinance 21-002, amending the city's code of ordinances to regulate commercial activity on city property. This is tab 2. So there's a lot here, and you know, I want to thank the Parks Committee for taking this on, and especially the special committee who really worked through the details on this, and to Max for really doing a lot of work to provide the structure. I think that is a very good foundation for something that overall I think is an improvement to clarify, you know, what we're looking for when businesses are doing business in town. And I think that there were definitely, this was not an ideal process by any means. You know, we were caught on our heels last summer and came up with one part of this, a draft anyway, that or a beginning of a way to deal with this that was not ideal, but at least it gave us some ability to restrict unwanted behaviors that were occurring, and so now this is the next step, which is really looking at how this would be expanded to be across the board, dealing with businesses in general. Now, I know that there are some questions and concerns here, and I think they could be substantial. And, you know, just in going through this myself, I have a number of questions and comments and suggestions and I did not have the time to talk to as many businesses as I would have liked to leading up to this. We didn't have a whole lot of lead time to look through this and really process it. You know, I just want to make sure that I clarify, one of the things I did clarify in my discussions with the administrator today was that the exceptions that are listed, which I think might need a little tweaking, but anyway, whatever we end up with for the number of people per day, et cetera, for businesses that would be exceptions, those people who are exceptions, people who have businesses that are accepted, do not need to register with a direct seller's permit, nor do they need to pay for a direct seller's permit. So anyone who fits any of these descriptions, which maybe are not completely clear, I think it's a good basis for talking about the exceptions, and it sounds like we might have some work to do in thinking through all of the different scenarios that we want to make sure are addressed so that it's clear and we don't have to keep coming back to it and making edits and adaptations to the ordinance. In talking with one business owner in particular, and knowing that you know, there are lots of ice fishermen that operate in the wintertime that we certainly don't want to put undue burden on. I think potentially I would suggest that we would increase the number of people per day to maybe 8 or something like that. Maybe even, you know, I don't know, maybe more than that if we're looking at the scenario like Linda's talking about. I don't know how many people normally are in a class for someone, and at what point, you know, do we want them to have a permit to do that business? Certainly that's not the kind of business that would require the CAP, the commercial authorization permit. You know, so there's different levels. I feel like it really needs to get hashed out a little bit more. And then in reading the minutes from the Parks Committee, in their recommendation to move this forward, I believe it said that they recommended just having a daily limit and not a monthly, because that would be harder to keep track of. And so that was another thing that I would recommend, is that we ditch the monthly limit. And I think that would help a great deal in addressing a number of concerns that are out there. But I do think that there's more that needs to be done. I turned into Scott just a number of edits that are just typos and punctuation and those sorts of things, of course, because that's what I do. But I still have some questions that I think are going to require some clarification and also suggestions that I think are going to be too much for us to sit and try to go through tonight. And I know that there are others that have input as well. So I would like to see a motion to postpone this to next month.
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion that we postpone a decision regarding ordinance 21-002, amending the city's code of ordinances to regulate commercial activity on city property.
I'll second that.
So there's a motion by Karen and a second by Tom to postpone the decision to amend the city's code to, did you say to next month? Did you give it a time frame, Karen?
I did not, but if you have a recommendation, I would entertain that to add to the motion. Now, I mean, you know, we don't have any current issue, but that's not to say that wouldn't occur in the interim, so I would amend my motion to indicate at the February council meeting that this item would come back on the agenda.
Second that.
Tom, are you okay with that amendment?
Yep, I'm fine with it.
Can I do that, Max?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would just say that if any council members have any ideas or recommendations, anything to be added to this, that does be emailed to Scott so that they can be included and come into this for review prior to the meeting. So that we're not in the same position at the February meeting.
Would it be reasonable to, I mean, maybe it's not necessary to have it as a motion, you tell me, but it seems like it should go back to Parks Committee and open it up for, to allow for community input and be a place for open comment. Or review by zoning, even. In addition?
So, I'm gonna just call on Jen here real quick.
Sorry, I forgot.
I'm not so sure, Tony, you can help too. I don't know if it needs to go back to the Parks Committee. I just want to give a really quick kind of background. I will say that the Parks Committee really struggled, right? I mean, we tried, I'm telling you. This is not an easy ordinance. The only time that we made progress is when Max came in to help us. It is all the scenarios, all the concerns that are brought up this evening, we talked at great lengths about. Linda, we brought your Zumba concerns up every time we talked. I mean, all sorts of things, because it's very difficult to balance our being able to utilize our parks by citizens and also local businesses, but yet also, looking for the administration and everything that goes through when we have events or when you have repetitive things and you need garbages and bathrooms and all sorts of things that, actually require a lot of city's efforts, resources, and time of our staff. So there's a balance, and I think we can get there. I do not believe that it needs to go to the Parks Committee. We can ask the Parks Committee if they have any other further edits that they can send them also to Max. I don't think that it needs to go back to our committee, is my personal opinion. We struggled with the fees, for sure. We struggled with the exceptions, just like we're talking about. So these issues that are coming up is no surprise to me at all. Tony, do you feel like it needs to go back to the Parks Committee?
I would agree with Jen and say no, I don't believe it does. The special work group spent a long time researching and evaluating other cities and municipalities' ordinances, and we tried looking for what we thought would best work for Washburn. And then we had robust discussions after that, looking at specific businesses that may be affected in Washburn and how to best work through what we have. So I think what we have now would be good to just to continue discussion at the greater level, not necessarily back with the Parks Committee.
Yeah.
And I'll add a couple more things here that maybe Scott could distribute to all the council members, the actual language in section 743. There are more exceptions than are included in this proposed ordinance. The exceptions that are listed here are only ones that I changed or proposed changing. There are 14 separate exceptions in the direct seller's ordinance. So maybe that clarity, if that could be emailed out to everyone, would help some there. And second, just as far as the fee structure goes, that was where a lot of the discussion was. What is proposed in here, there are several different ideas or possibilities. If people have other possibilities for ideas for what fee structures could be, we can kind of present, my thought was to present several different options to council, and council chooses that final option, rather than just presenting one and deciding whether you want it or not.
And is that for the cap that you're talking about, Max?
The cap on potential customers per month would be in the exception section. The fee structure was on the last page of the proposed application for commercialization permit, page 2 there. So I had fee schedules, one being just a proposed daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and guided kayak tours. Another proposal having some refund of fees if you're profits don't exceed a certain percentage over the permitting fee. And then another option that potentially broke down at 2 different categories for fees, whether you're using a waterfront park or a different city property. Then maybe we would value those waterfront access ones differently than the other city property.
So I'm not exactly sure the best way to get everyone's suggestions compiled and then put out for review prior to the next meeting, other than, you know, I hate to say it, but we could have a study session and, you know, just make that open to the public and hash through some things. I'm just going to maybe proceed with one other of my suggestions, which was to add something under section 711.4 under equipment. Potentially, I'm thinking it might be in our interest to put something in here to say the city has the right to remove any items that have been unattended for a period of time, whatever that may be. And the thing that I'm thinking of is the 12-pack of beer that was sitting on the beach. You know, making it clear that we are able to remove things like that have been unattended. I don't know if we need to do that, if we need to clarify that, or if we just have the right to do that anyway, but that was one of my suggestions for that section. I did clarify, it sounds like the behaviors that the general conduct requirements that would be for any business that's being conducted on or utilizing city properties, that would be required by all. And so the thing that I was trying to clarify there was, so if you are operating your business somehow, either utilizing city property or on it, you have to have an identifier. The vehicle or vessel signage, I guess, is the one that I'm talking about, which is item L. So not all businesses have their vehicles identified with their business logo or name on it. So I guess if that is going to be a requirement, if you're operating your business utilizing city property, and Max, this is probably a question for you, is it sufficient to have a piece of paper with that information on it taped to the window on the inside of your vehicle so that it can be identified as the vehicle that is with your business? Is that not even something that this is getting at? Is this more for vehicles and vessels that are being used by the customers of the business?
This is for vehicles or vessels that are being used to actually provide the services. So let's say Linda drives her car down to the park and then does a yoga session in the park. Just because she drove her own car there wouldn't require her car to have this logo requirement to it, if that helps.
And
so
then another
definition there in section L is vehicles and vessels used to provide services on city property. So just getting the owner to the city property isn't actually using that to provide those services. It's if a vehicle were used to haul kayaks to the Cold Dock Beach, that vehicle is actually being used to provide the services. If there is a kayak that's being used to take someone out, that's being used to provide services. But just the transportation of the individual down there, I would say, isn't being used to provide those services, so that wouldn't need those signage requirements.
Did we get kicked off?
No.
We did. Max,
Now
you may have to repeat that.
And now you're muted. Something wonky is happening.
There we go.
There, now you're unmuted again. So could you please repeat what you just said, please,
Yes.
Smith?
If you look at the language in exception L, or requirement L there, specifically limited to vehicles and vessels, quote, used to provide services on city property. So if that vehicle were just used for the owner to get there, like Linda getting down to the park in her own vehicle, that vehicle's not used to provide those services, so that wouldn't require the signage. It's more
Okay, got it.
on the
And then-
kayaks used, they need a sign or a sticker so that we can look and see how many kayaks are with this company. The van used to shuttle kayaks down there, so we can look and see, okay, this is who this vehicle is associated with.
Okay. So another scenario there that was brought up, I spoke with John Bubala with his drone. So if he's providing service with his drone, is there anything there that he, does his drone just need to be labeled with his business so that if it crashes, we know that it's his?
That's already,
And I think there are Federal Aviation Administration, FAA does require certain notice and labeling requirements on drones if they are being flown in those areas.
that's already already a law.
And I don't know the specifics of that. And ultimately, what a lot of the struggle was in the Parks Committee and in the work group on this is we are never going to anticipate every potential issue that comes up. If someone flies a drone from their private property over the airspace above a city park to another private property, realistically, there's nothing the city's going to do about that. The FAA has stepped in and has tried to regulate that as well as possible. So I think in those situations, we defer to that greater authority.
Thank you. The only other thing that I want to bring up at this moment is, well, I guess two quick things. One is, we had an issue where Tom Major came to speak on behalf of the marina for the excessive use of their restrooms. And one of the questions I had is, do we need to consider if a business is doing enough business to require the cap and has a number of scheduled tours in a day? Is that something, and that's probably not even something we need to decide tonight, but I'm just throwing out there this concept of restroom use. That's something that needs to somehow get addressed potentially. And then also, do we want to consider not just marking areas for no parking, but do we want to mark areas designated specifically for businesses to park so that they're not, they're parking for the day, and, do we make a specific place for them to park maybe away from the beach area so that it doesn't block up, for people to come and enjoy the beach. So those are just the things the general concepts that I thought of and ran into. Is there anyone else who wants to bring anything up, or do we want to open the floor for any further input from the public for consideration as we rehash this, and just to make sure that we capture that input, or are we just looking to get written input?
I would move to open the floor.
If I may, you have a motion already on the floor.
We do.
Is that, isn't this one we discussed? Are we not supposed to
We
be?
can't have a motion on top of a motion.
Right.
We have a motion to postpone to next month. That is correct. So we need to vote on that before we would open the floor, potentially?
Yes, the motion to open the floor would be a separate procedural motion.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Yes, you should vote on the motion to postpone this till a later date before moving to open the floor. Ultimately, if you want public comment on this, you can either have it at the next meeting where this is postponed to, or you can vote not to postpone this right now, have some public comment, and then make a motion as you wish after that public comment.
Okay, let's vote on the motion that's on the floor to postpone until next time.
And Mayor, since I made the motion, if I might make a comment before we vote. We did talk about the possibility, you, I believe, talked about a study session, whether or not we might consider modifying that comment or that idea in terms of having an information session so that people, and I don't know, that's probably splitting the hair, but an information time so that businesses and interested persons in the community could come and we could have a forum to discuss it. I think it's difficult, not impossible, but difficult to provide written comment without the benefit of some discussion and explanation of some of the provisions of this ordinance. And while written comments are certainly helpful and appropriate, I think that the idea of an information session might be worthwhile to get that input and discussion about, as Max has said, it's difficult to anticipate every possibility, but it would also be a time where the intent of this ordinance could be described to businesses and others who might be interested in its provisions.
Very good. I think that's a good suggestion. Any other discussion on this before we vote on postponing?
Yeah, I would just like to ask if we could maybe send a request to the chamber to maybe send a notification out to the businesses involved with the chamber. That might be the avenue to most quickly get it out.
Absolutely. I think that's warranted, and if we can just decide, at some point we'll decide on when we can do this informational session, and then we'll include that in the information that can go out to the chamber and the chamber members. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Then all in favor of postponing this amendment until February meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Does anyone want to open up the floor at this point, or are we just going to wait and do an information session then?
I think we should wait.
I'm good with waiting. Yep. So, the comment I made about having open comment. Sorry, it is still hard to hear. I put on an extra layer of mask. Part of the reason I earlier suggested and asked about appropriateness for sending this back to the Parks Committee was so that as it would be built in then as an opportunity for information or questions. Yeah. Is there anybody, can we just ask for a show of hands if somebody wants to make a comment? Melinda, would you have comments now, or would you like to be part of an informational session down the road?
I think Jen will make sure that the informational session works with your schedule, so you could be available. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time hearing.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I gathered is you were, rather than sending it back to Parks, maybe someone from Parks could be at the informational session, Laura. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, we can move along. Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Can you guys hear us okay? Because I'm having a really hard time. The only one I can really hear is Scott Kluber, and I think everybody on the virtual stuff is shaking their head. It's tough tonight. It's been pretty good lately, but tonight is tough.
Take this off.
Okay, so, all right, I took the phone off and it's touching my mouth. Not my mouth. I have 2 masks on, and I think that's making it even worse.
That's okay. Just as long as you speak loudly, it should work.
Okay. I am ready to move along, and wait for notice of a date for an informational or study session. Still alone? Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you to the Parks Committee for all their time they put in. They were great notes in the minutes, and it helped a lot.
This is tough.
It's tough. And the only thing I can say is that, if you schedule an information meeting, I will be there, and I'm sure that we have some folks on our planning, on that Parks Committee too, that had a really great input. Jamie and some other folks that I'm sure will try to make it too. So we'll be there. We don't have anything else going on. It's COVID. Nobody's going anywhere. Except Melissa.
All right, so we will plan on an informational meeting soonish, perhaps next week, so that we can have time to digest and get a new version of this to look at for the next meeting. All right, very good. Thank you, everyone, on that. So we will move on then to discussion and action on the process for letting Phase 1 of the Bayfield Street reconstruction project in 2024. This is tab 3 of your packet. And when basically the process for letting the bid is what we're deciding on. And the process normally would either be the DOT lets or puts out the bid for both parts of the project, the city's part and their part together, or the city does their part separately than the DOT. The letter outlines the pros and cons of those, and then in our discussion, Mike came up with a third option, which is not normally something that the DOT does, and I don't know who wants to speak to this, but Scott, do you want to say anything other than what you said in your introductory letter here, or do we want to have Mike from AIRS say anything about this, especially, we did meet with the DOT this afternoon to clarify some things, so that might be helpful to give a bit of a summary. Mike, do you care to unmute and help us with that update that we got a little bit this afternoon from DOT?
Sure. So, not sure what everyone received in their packet, but typically what we've seen is two alternatives in the past. As Mary mentioned, the water and sewer many times is let through the DOT process, and it's all bid at the state level and with their roadway portion, and they award it to one contractor. Maybe a subcontractor doing the water and sewer, but it's all through the state system. That's different than when you do a water sewer street project where you let it locally and advertise it, put the plans out, and then you decide at city council who the lowest responsible bidder is. So the advantage to doing it through the DOT is that it's one contractor. The DOT handles to make sure that everything is done in a timely manner. Whoever the general is takes care of all the coordination of their subs, making sure everything is there and in time, and all the aspects of construction are coordinated by the one DOT contractor. That's an advantage. Another advantage to that method is a lot of the risk also goes to the DOT contractor versus the water and sewer contractor, because the DOT's contract is with the general, and the city only has a relationship, which your next agenda item is a state municipal agreement. You have a state municipal agreement with the DOT. That's your only relationship to the DOT and their contractors through that agreement. So you're shielded a lot from some of the potential risks of a contractor doing a bad job or the project settling in the future because they didn't do proper compaction, which I know in your clay never happens, but they always do a good job. But so that's kind of the advantages of going through the DOT system. The local system gives you much more flexibility. You have direct control over your sewer and water contractor. The state, they look at sewer and water as something foreign to them. It's as foreign to them as gas and electric and telephone is. They have no idea how that works or how it all goes together. So by you doing that yourself, you have direct control over your contractor. But then in order to do that, because the DOT would have their roadway contractor, the city would have their sewer and water contractor, you have to make sure the language is written correctly so that everybody plays nice in the sandbox together. And that's the key part, is you run the risk of having a bad contractor that causes issues and affects the DOT roadway in the future. Now, through your contracts, through your specifications, which we help you write, we help you administer, you push all of that liability and risk onto your contractor. So it ultimately is their responsibility of should they not perform. The biggest reason you would even consider this is cost. Cost and flexibility of being able to control your contractor. But we have seen on countless jobs that we do this very same way, where DOT comes through a community, there's existing water and sewer that needs to be redone. We see an average of 30 to 50% premium of water and sewer prices paid by utilizing the DOT process versus your local process. And on a $1 million sewer and water project, that's $300,000 to $500,000 extra that you're potentially looking at. So from your budget's perspective, you can do a lot of other streets and sewer and water in town if you're not paying that premium. But it comes with the risk of coordination. The risk of your contractor not playing nice in the sandbox with the DOT contractor. And that's where the language and the contracts on both sides really protect you as a community should you decide to go that route. And we heard from the DOT, as I said, water and sewers is foreign to them as alligators are in Washburn. They have no idea what to do with it, how to handle it. And by doing it through the DOT, the contractors realize that they know that the roadway portion is what the DOT cares about, and the sewer and water portion is 100% local, city cost. So they underweight the roadway and overweight the sewer and water, knowing that many times the community would not desire to delay the bid because their costs come in higher, because that would delay the entire roadway bid. And if that were to happen, it could cost a construction season, or even more dollars if the DOT had to rebid it because the initial costs come in too high. So, and then the third alternative, which Mary with the electric does all of the time, and we do all of the time on a local basis, is you have an alternate bid, where you have the base bid for the roadway, and then you have an alternate for the water and sewer. And if everything worked out, you would award both the roadway and the water and sewer. The DOT has absolutely no mechanism to be able to even understand how that works at a local level. and listening to them to try to explain how they might do that internally at the state level, it was painful listening to them. And they were going to push the cost of them to develop a statewide system back on you because they don't have any budget to develop that system. So I don't think that third alternative is viable with the state. Someday they might get there, but at this point, they have no idea how to deal with an alternate.
So I think after that conversation this afternoon, it sounded like they'd be willing to look into the possibility of maybe trying to figure it out, and they could, if we wanted them to, they could come up with a cost estimate of what that would be, that they would put back on the city to do that. But the number that was thrown out as a ballpark number was what, 20,000? For them to do the extra work to figure the plans basically two ways. One way with all of it together and one way with part of it not in the plans. So is it worth around 20,000 to potentially save, it's just, the other thing, I guess, that the DOT process saves is administration time of our staff. No, because you would be doing the administration?
Correct. Yeah, they don't even do the administration for the sewer and water. Now, they ultimately will pay the contractor, but they still want us, as your representative, to review the quantities and the pay request to make sure it's accurate, just so they can send it to Madison and send the check out and then send you the bill. So they would have some additional cost on their end, but in reality, the administrative cost on your end stays about the same. I thought I saw Karen's hand up.
Tom has a comment too.
Karen, I see Tom. Karen, go ahead.
Well, that was my question. In terms of, Mike, can you just expand a little bit on that comment in terms of your staff time and our city staff time? In terms of if the bid is let through DOT versus if we let the bid ourselves. Could you just expand on that a little bit in terms of time involved and intensity of that time?
I can. Jerry, did you want to jump in too before I do, or?
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, so me and Mike actually had a conversation last week, did a little video chatting about all of this. Trying to get on a one-to-one page on how we would move forward with this. And I believe, the concern is what would the workload be on our staff as far as, the project goes. And to understand that AIRS is actually, they're going to be overseeing the project itself. My job would be to, when they run into issues, as we were talking about, something's going to change or this is going to happen, who's going to be that voice for the city. But overall, AIRS is going to be handling that project. And as the state said today, regardless of what you do, if you allow them to put it in their bid and bid it out with their project, AIRS still has to do the job. They still have to verify the quantities. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be paying that administrative fee for them to handle the document, some of the documentation, and for those payments, which we're already working with. Oh no. Go ahead. Can you hear me yet? Somebody decided to call me. So anyway, so in the long run, I think financially, we're better off to run it on our own because the state is really giving us the cold shoulder on, they're gonna want something, but they're still expecting us to do the same job as if we did it ourselves. I think, like Mike had said, if he writes it in the provisions in the bid of how we're going to move forward, working with the state and their contractors, I think we'll be fine. Nothing's a given, but financially wise, I think the city's gonna be in a better position handling this project themselves because the state is giving us a lot of secondary information if they have to try to handle it. I think it's just gonna make it more complicated all the way around. Because once it's in their hands, that's just another hand that has a say-so in the project, which if they overseeing it and they make some decisions, we may not have a choice in those decisions, and we may end up paying for something that you may particularly not agree to. I don't know what your thought on that, Mike.
Yeah, and Karen, to your point, whether the project is included in the state or bid with the roadway or bid separate from the roadway, the state will not do the inspection or the administration of the water and sewer elements. So we would have to do that either way. So there's no additional cost for you, for us, on whichever way the project is bid. And as Jerry mentioned, there may be some additional administrative costs that the DOT would charge you that wouldn't be there if you do it on your local, do it your own way. And then to Jerry's point, a little bit is also of potential additional costs if you went through the state. We saw this 2 years ago in Hayward. We did Highway 27 south of Hayward, and the water and sewer went through an area of contaminated soil. And the DOT's contractor and their agreement with the DNR is more stringent than what the state statutes are and what you would have to do with the DNR. And so because the water and sewer got done with the state, they forced them to take the contaminated soil to the asphalt plant and dispose of it that way versus putting it back in the same location that it came out of. And it ended up costing the city an extra $25,000 for that one decision that the state made that the city did not have any say in. So that was in, with this project and with the potential for contaminated soils all up and down this corridor, there is the potential that that same decision could have adverse consequences for this project as well.
Thank you very much for helping us through this. I have two questions for Scott, and one is, do we need a decision on this tonight, or it sounds like in the memo you're wanting to proceed with leaving the door open for either way still at this point. Has that changed at all? And do you have any, my second question is, do you have any concerns about the city letting the sewer and water on our own?
So I have been going back and forth on this because there are certainly advantages and disadvantages both ways. After the conversation today with the state, I agree that it's unlikely that they're it's going to be just as much work trying to come up with their alternate plan. We have certainly let many projects and are fully capable of doing that. I just want everyone to understand that as we get into this project and move forward, even now, this project is going to start to become a significant amount of time that has to be dedicated to that. So just know that with the limited staff that we have already, this is going to take a significant chunk of that time. So otherwise, I'm fine with going forward with that. If the council is comfortable, go ahead and make the decision tonight. The more decisions we can get done as opposed to postponing them, the better off we are.
Mike, I have a question for you. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Now, are you guys going to be doing the inspection of the city water and sewer when it goes down, so we don't have a fiasco like they had across the bay? With laterals and mains being too small?
Correct, yep.
All right. That's all. I'll make a motion that we approve doing it on our own, hiring somebody else, not the state.
I second that.
Okay, so that was a motion by Tom and a second by Carl
Yes.
to have the city let the water and sewer on our own. Is there other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. The city's going along. Thank you for your insight and leadership on this, Mike and Jerry, for your time also. And Scott, hopefully Mike's going to take some of that work off.
Definitely.
Very good. Thanks, everyone. And then related, the next item, discussion and action on agreements with WISDOT for Phase 2 of the Bayfield Street Reconstruction Project starting in 2026. So again, the sooner we can start this process and get the agreement in place and the planning work can begin, the better. Time is money.
And I would move that we approve the agreement with WISDOT for Phase 2 in 2026.
I second that.
Motion by Karen and a second by Carl. Is there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Excellent. This is exciting. There is a lot of work ahead of us, but hopefully this is our opportunity to really have some impact on how our downtown looks. So not just the improvements under the ground, but tying into this, the decisions that we'll have ahead on some of the decorative lighting and other aesthetics and amenities along the way. So the beginning of an exciting time. All right, our next item, and thank you for your time joining us, Mike. Take care.
Thank you. See you later.
All right. Next item, discussion and action on Resolution 21-001, combining wards for 2021 elections.
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of Resolution 21-001, combination of wards to a single polling place for the elections in the spring, February 16, and the general, April 20, 2021.
I second.
That's a motion by Karen and a second by Carl. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That makes it simpler for people just to come and vote at City Hall. Okay, the next item is discussion and action on request for relief on an existing agreement with Pearl Beach Construction related to the previously purchased Lot 47 at the southwest corner of the intersection of Harbor View Drive and Central Avenue. So we have a letter in the packet, And at this time, we certainly could hear any statement. If Mr. Gross would like to make any statement further than the letter, to accompany that, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the letter goes into more than enough detail explaining what my client's position is, what our concerns are, and why he believes that basically a rescission of the sale agreement is warranted. He would request that his $25,000 be paid in full, the agreement be vacated, the city takes possession of the lot, and the parties go their separate ways here. I think we've laid out what our concerns are, what our claims would be, and why we don't think that this is salvageable going forward. So I would request that the city council return my client's money. He will return the property, and hopefully the parties can just move on.
I guess just a question that I would have is there a reason that you think that the contract should not be fulfilled, that, taking out of the equation things that don't affect, that the city isn't involved with directly. The agreement, I guess, was for the substantial completion to be done by August. The request did not come to us until June, 2 months prior to the date that the substantial completion was supposed to be done. I'm just a little confused as to why that request didn't come to the council until 2 months before that work was supposed to be substantially complete, and Mr. Dornberg hadn't done anything, to my knowledge, on the property at all.
Your Honor, I'll respectfully disagree with that classification. Mr. Dornberg had gone forward with plan development and was working to secure materials to complete the project. Not to be flippant, but as we're all aware, there was a global pandemic going on during this time, which hampered and frustrated the intentions and projects of people all over the world, including Mr. Dornberg. I do not know specifically why he did not come before the council sooner, other than assuming that given, and this is supposition on my part, and I can't hold him to it, other than assuming that given that everybody was dealing with the global pandemic and had irons in the fire, everybody was going to be understanding and work towards granting an extension in light of the facts both on the ground in Washburn and worldwide. As I stated in the letter, he was having problems with some of his suppliers telling him that they couldn't get materials for steel buildings because the steel comes out of China, and there were things going on in China at the time that were impacting the ability to deliver. Based on my conversations with my client, he just simply believed that in the spirit of everyone working in good faith, they would recognize that there were some unique circumstances happening, and a brief extension would not be a problem in light of what was going on locally and worldwide.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Gross? Otherwise, I think the balance of our discussion will likely be in closed session on this. Does anyone else have anything before we move on? Jen?
Is this the time to ask questions?
I think as long as there are questions for open session and not regarding the city's, liability or...
No.
Well, I guess... Mary, if I may here,
Please.
I think this is a good time for discussion and questions. And if there's anything that I believe should be saved for closed session regarding potential litigation with the city, I'll speak up and say that that matter shouldn't be discussed now.
Very good, thanks, Max.
Okay. Yes, I was a little not confused. I guess I was a little disappointed. I went back and listened to the city council meeting in June today, just to refresh what happened. Because I was trying to think of why we wouldn't grant an extension, and then everything came back to me. You know, it was really clear. Like he didn't say like I can't build because of COVID. He didn't like go into any examples. What I heard very clear was that the building was ordered, and he was planning on starting construction in July 6th. Like he gave a date. And so for me, I was like, well, boy, once he starts to build construction, it was like kind of a weird thing. And so my question is, A, why did he not start to build in July? And if he couldn't build in July, was there no appetite to come back at all to try to get an extension? Because I think it was just kind of a weird thing. Like he didn't come to us for, I mean, there was a couple things about how COVID and how he was busy, and there was some discussion on how, you know, why didn't he start even before this whole COVID thing came down? But it was pretty clear that he had, and that was my question. I'm like, well, you have a building ordered and there's no issues. It was constructed and coming. Why was it not why did he not start construction?
Thank you, Counselor. My understanding is that the meeting was on June 8th, and that's when he asked for an extension. That's when he told he would be getting none. So after that, he did not think that he was, if he believed that he could start construction on July 6th, but not have substantial completion done by August, he could invest the efforts, go through building it, and still be found in default of the agreement. He was given no assurances that if he began, that he'd be given any leniency, and he has given me no indication that he believed that he could have construction completed and all of his obligations done by the date in the agreement. At that point, his understanding was the city council was not going to work with him, and he was going to not be granted any extensions, and therefore, why would he go forward to attempt to complete partial construction if he was going to be given not even the brief extension that he had asked for?
Okay, well, I didn't get that feeling from the meeting. When I listened to the meeting again today, there was several people, myself and several other counselors, that said, if we see anything going, we're going to be completely open to all sorts of things. But because there had been no good faith, and I mean, even if he would have brought in that anything about the building, so I guess I was just a little taken back, I guess, and a little shocked by the letter, personally. So, thank you for answering that. I guess I just, when I walked away from there, I thought it was a very good feeling, and I thought that he was gonna start construction on July 6th, and I guess I did not feel the animosity, so. That's all I have, thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Tom?
During that meeting, I recall, I had stated that if he had foundation footing in the floor poured by the end of August, I would be willing to grant an extension, and Councilman Broberg says, I'm going to hold you to your words. That's what I had said in the meeting. He hadn't even mowed the grass when we had that meeting. Nothing. So I don't know, it's on him, it can't be on us.
Respectfully, these are advisory assurances that are being given to my client in the meeting based on my review of the agenda and listening to the minutes. I understand Councilor Macias's and your position. If A, then we would have B. However, that's conditional. He could complete that, but there was no assurance that that would be granted. I understand that you made a representation on the record. However, that's my client can't work in detrimental reliance on that if when he's told, may I have a brief extension, it's no, you can try to get there, and if we feel good enough about it, then maybe we'll give you an extension. That's just economically impossible in terms of a method on which to go forward. He sought assurances that if he went forward, he would not be frustrated in his purpose, and he did not receive them at the June 8th meeting. I was not representing him at the time, but had I been representing him, I probably would have told him that's not an economically or contractually rational basis to go forward.
Does anyone else have anything that they would like to state or ask about the situation?
I would like to make a
Dave?
statement, Mayor.
Dave, could you speak up,
Please, go ahead.
So, I take particular issue to this letter. You know, since Mr. Gross has been so kind to sling my name and family honor into the mud. You know, for generations, my family has been committed to this community by volunteerism, civic involvement, enterprise, and philanthropy. You know, I personally chair an organization that I pour my heart and soul into, donate time and money to help operate it, sit on several committees and donate and assist other organizations such as the Bayfield Rec Center and CORE. And I'm not making these statements because I feel entitled, but to point out that if I'm going to sell my family's long-standing honorable legacy, I can guarantee you it's going to be for more than $471, which is the total amount of business that my wife has conducted with American Hotel Association and Harborview Event Center. You know, I make decisions based on facts and what's best for this community. I do this because I want to make this community a better place for my children. And, you know, I find the letter, I don't know, it's hard to even put it in words. But he took the time to investigate how much business supposedly my wife does with American Hotel Association. But what he didn't discover is that Anderson Electric, the business that I own and operate, has not conducted one penny of business with either of those entities. And my association with them thus far has been through the Washburn Business Alliance, which is an unofficial organization that meets to generate ideas and foster business opportunities for the community as a whole. He also stated that the information as far as getting a set of state-approved plans was not needed. It is needed, according to the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, SPS Article 361.30, all public buildings and places of employment are subject to plan review and approval. So I have that with me. Except as provided in paragraph B and subsection 4, the construction of the alteration of an addition to a public building or a place of employment may not commence unless plans for the project have been submitted to and approved by the department and its authorized representative in accordance with SPS 361.31. So he apparently was putting up a storage group S, and if it contains less than 25,000 cubic feet in volume, he does not need a permit or state-approved plans. His building measures over 75,000 cubic feet in volume, 3 times the amount needed for that. And he was specifically asked at that meeting whether or not he needed state-approved plans, because I was certain he did, and he said no, he did not. So Mr. Dornberg had 2 years to complete this process, and at the 11th hour, with little or no comprehension of what was required of him to construct a building of this nature in the state of Wisconsin, he asked for an extension of 4 months. The plan approval and engineering process can take up to 6 months to accomplish. Construction cannot commence on a project of this nature until approval from the state. The plans he submitted at the May council meeting show no heating, ventilation, air quality, plumbing, egress, thermal insulation, or electrical specifications, items that would have had to be submitted to the state for the process to begin. So this most likely would have taken at least another month to compile and draw up for submittal, throwing yet another delay in the process. And why one would purchase a building, as he stated, without even knowing if it will pass muster with the state, shows a gross lack of misunderstanding. Furthermore, blaming COVID for delays in construction is, in my opinion, disingenuous and opportunistic, since COVID did not affect any manufacturing until March of 2020. All his ducks should have been in a row and ready to go by the summer of 2019. Mr. Dornberg also stated that he was very busy volunteering his time for wounded warriors and thought that it would excuse him from his obligations. I do applaud Mr. Dornberg for taking the time to make sure our wounded vets are all well taken care of. But it's a very honorable way to spend his free time. That's key, free time. Lastly, I would like to go on record and say that I was excited when Mr. Dornberg presented to the City Council in 2018, and there was much community support behind him for Pearl Beach construction. I supported his endeavors and hope that what he had to offer improved the lives of some of our community members and families. He offered attractive wages and good, honest work that many were excited about. At that time, I was not a council member, but I sat on the Planning Commission. And at the December 2018 Planning Commission, there was a motion to approve the site plans. And I went on the record as a second to make that motion. So if I was a crony, as he put it, why would I have gone on record supporting his site plan without hesitation? That's it.
Thank you.
Mary, I have one question for Attorney Gross before discussions in potential closed session.
Please go ahead.
So Blake, without committing the city to any course of action here, if the city agreed to extend this agreement until the end of 2021 for your client to build this building, would he be okay with that? Would he accept?
I would have to consult with them, but based on my understanding of his position now, the answer would be no, given not only has his intents been frustrated with respect to the actions of the city council, but as I stated in my letter, there are other parties who are not members of the city council, and the American Hotel Association and its members are among those who have engaged in ongoing harassment. And at this point, I think the well's been irretrievably poisoned. My client would have little to no impetus to build next to someone who has a well-documented pattern and practice of bringing complaints about my client, almost entirely unfounded, to this city council and to other state regulatory bodies, as indicated in my letter as late as October of this year. Largely baseless accusations being mailed quasi-anonymously to state agencies alleging all sorts of violations were found not to be taking place. I think that I couldn't advise my client to agree at this point to an extension just so we can build next to someone who has spent 2 years trying to run him out of town. I think that well is poisoned. If the city offers an extension, I will take it to him, obviously, but I think he'll be disinclined to accept at this point. I think that there's just that, I think that the relationship has soured with respect to dealing with the neighbors and the refusal to grant him any extension at this point. I think he's ready to be done and move on. You'd like to give the property back, and then the city can do with it what it will. He would like his initial $25,000 back. Everybody shakes hands and goes their separate ways. Or if they can't be inclined to draw themselves to do that, they can wave politely from a distance and go their separate ways.
I'm still just a little bit confused as to why your client does not think he needs to abide by the contract.
I will defer to, if it's not needing to abide by the contract, at this point, there's been a breach of contract, and we will, if we go forward, allege that the breach is on the part of the city, including the covenants of good faith and fair dealing. There's not, and his delay was completely foreseeable, excusable, and rational in light of the circumstances, including acts of God, such as a global virus that affected the ability for people to acquire supplies, receive shipments from worldwide, including China, be able to conduct construction in a safe and efficient manner. I don't think that it's my client doesn't need to abide by the contract. There's been a mutual breach of the contract under the kindest terms possible, and the correct thing at this point to do is to withdraw, to rescind the contract. Both parties go their separate ways. That is the cleanest and least litigious way to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything before we move on? All right, seeing nothing, thank you very much for your time, Councilor Gross, and unless there's action that someone wants to take currently, we will move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time.
Thank you also for being here. Appreciate it. Does anyone have a motion to move into closed session?
I move to go into closed session.
I'll second that.
Was that a motion by Carl and a second by Tom?
Yes.
And Mary, this would be just for the record, pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 sub 1 E and G, to discuss potential negotiations and to confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation.
Thank you very much for stating that. I did not have that in front of me. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
We need to do a roll call vote on that.
Oh, roll call, okay.
Dave Anderson,
Yes.
Carl Broberg,
Yes.
Jen Mazias,
She's muted, but she said yes.
Jen, you're muted.
I'm muted, yep, yes.
Mayor McGrath, Tom Nymus,
Yes.
Karen Novacek,
Yes.
Lloyd Tulowitzki.
Yes.
Closed session entry at 7:07.
Okay, and then I think we're going to put everyone who's not in closed session in a waiting room, and then you're welcome to rejoin when we come out if you would like.